Sort of a sad day when you talk about the passing of someone in the video game industry that really left their mark. But it's also a celebration of their life. When Ralph Baer passed a few years back, it was a celebration. It was good to see the internet and the video game fans in general come out and, really honor the legacy of someone. So the passing of Masaya Nakamura, who founded Namco, Ian's favorite video game company, and one of the most important video game companies ever. I tweeted out, you could not imagine the landscape of video games now without Namco because they were so influential. A little bit about the man himself. So, Masaya Nakamura looks like he got involved with some sort of shipbuilding he studied after World War II. And then started Namco. I did not know this. Like mechanical horses, you put like a quarter in and you ride on them. That's how Namco started. That's what they originally did. And they developed those little, coin-operated mechanical devices and little rides. And then when the video game fad it was in the late 70s came about, hey, let's start doing that. Let's have an arcade division. Why the hell not? Space Invaders blew it up in Japan. You had these arcades popping up. And so good old Messiah said, I want to do that. I want to start an arcade division, and I want to develop things internally. And that's what they did. And thankfully so. Thankfully that happened. Because if you want to remember, I wasn't there, but this is what everyone says, and this is all the evidence. And Pat, you weren't alive then. Prior to 1980, in particular, arcades, and we talk about this in the video game years, historians say this, and it's a truth. When you look at pictures of them, actual pictures, arcades before the 1980s and the 70s were dark, they were dingy, because they were mainly adult-oriented, focusing primarily on males. Go ahead and take a look at arcade games, like a list of arcade games, and look at arcade games that came out in the 70s, prior to 1980, and prior to one game in particular that we'll get to. They were, for the most part, very simple games. You had a lot of breakout clones or pinball sort of games. You had single screen war games, games that emulated life more than what they would become. Simple games like, I think that Gremlin put out a game where you were a frog going around. Well, not life for humans, but life for a frog. That's, a fishing game. Obviously, you had a shit ton of Space Invaders clones after Space Invaders came out. So you had like those shoot the alien single screen games. You had some simple sports games like those Atari basketball game. You had Sprint. You had those simple racing games. You had Monaco GP. These were games that were directed and marketed and created for a very specific market for each of them. And a lot of those games didn't have massive wide appeal. The Namco games sort of changed that. And when you look at the Namco games, before the big one, they were sort of tiptoeing towards that. The biggest one being in 1979, Galaxian. Colorful, had a little bit of first for video games, top of my head. You had a little ditty, a little song before the round. That's pretty cool. If you didn't hear that in a game before, like, oh, what is that? Oh, some personality, some life there. Wasn't just monochrome. You had multiple colors there. Hey, this is something. I'm not saying this is everything, but this is something to start from. And then once you hit 1980, all bets are off. Obviously, you have the big one. You have Pac-Man. Comes out May 1980. Revolutionizes not just arcades, revolutionizes video games in general. Because here you have a video game in Pac-Man that is colorful, it's cute, it has the first mascot in video games, the first real IP you could mass market, appeal to men, women, boys, girls, everyone. It sort of redefined what an arcade game should be. It wasn't just some war game that some 45-year-old guy could enjoy. Anyone can play Pac-Man. It's simple. It's easy. It also helped establish the maze genre, which for the next few years you had all. I mean, that if you had the Space Invaders clones of the late 1970s and the early 80s, you had all the maze games, which is a fine genre. It got played out within a few years, but the maze genre is very important for games because it took the single screen game and made it more complex versus just, all right, let's cast our fishing rod and hope that a fish eats it on the screen. Now you incorporate movement on a single screen at least. So you still have the limitations of a single screen, but you can do more with the maze game. I mean, just looking at it, just technically. Colors, the sounds. You have really one of the first times you have a little cutscenes in a game, telling a story with actual characters in a game, and again, it appeals to everyone, and it blew up. It blew up in the pop culture. First time you have all these toys and cartoon shows and a freaking hit single based on a video game. It's insane to think about what the landscape would have looked like had Namco not sort of just punched the industry in the gut and say, all right, get up, look at this now. This isn't just your monochrome, Space Invaders clone number 78. This is something called Pac-Man that anyone could play, and we're going to fucking dominate with this game. And this will be the most recognizable video game character for a long, long, long ass time. Besides Crash Bandicoot. Oh no, we got Pac-Man. So that's important. And obviously Namco after that faltered a little bit, but they got back up there in the mid 80s after putting out like 47 different Pac-Man games. They decided, they branched out a little bit more. Namco purchased Atari Games in the mid 80s. That was important. They established Tengen to really go after Nintendo directly, and that was important. Whatever side you were on, the monopolistic practice of the NES should have been challenged by some third party, and I'm glad Tengen did that, and eventually that opened the door to more third-party development and Nintendo dropping their draconian policies, well, they're forced to in a lawsuit, on other systems. And especially once you got to the Genesis, the practice were out the window. Nintendo can no longer strong-arm a company to say, okay, only come out with games on our system and not the competitors. That was gone by then. But you needed a company like Tengen to challenge the monolithic Nintendo practices at the time. So that's important too. And obviously, in modern days, you have Namco, Bandai. They still put out games. They haven't fallen off completely. Obviously, they're not as big as they were in the early 80s, but they're still a very important company. The biggest games that they still put out, Tekken's freaking huge, and they have a bunch of other games as well. My favorite arcade game, Rolling Thunder, Namco, right there. I forgot about Galaga, too. Was Rally X 79 or 80? That one I kind of always forget. Rally X was also 80. So, Galaga was 81. All right, so Galaga was after Pac-Man. But Rally X, at the time, some people in the industry thought that Rally X was going to be the big hit and not Pac-Man, which is that's just interesting to me that you could sort of, and you see that sometimes with other industries, they predict one big thing. Betamax was going to be better than VHS. Didn't work out that way. The Zune was going to be better than the iPod. Well, no one thought that. So look at the lineup just in 80 and 81. In 82, that helped just, again, sort of open up video games to this mass market. Galaxian sort of paved the way a little bit. But then you have Pac-Man, Rally X, Miss Pac-Man. And I won't go into the other Pac-Mans, but they were fairly popular, but Miss Pac-Man was huge. Galaga, Bosconian is sort of a underlooked early arcade game. Dig Dug, Xevious, Pole Position in 82. Mappy in 83, Tower of Druaga. I say Dig Dug. So you just have all these titles that you can't imagine the arcade scene or video games in general without the influence of those 8 to 10 games. Like if you walked into any arcade, I'd say between 80 and 83, you are guaranteed to see at least one Pac-Man game of some sort, and probably at least one or two other Namco games. Probably almost guaranteed to see a Galaga game at least one Pac-Man game, and probably, we'll throw in like a Dig Dug or a Pac-Man Plus or a Super Pac-Man or a Mappy, one of those others. So just a great company. It's a shame that Ian's still not feeling well, because he could have probably just, he probably would have been either just gloating over the fact that, oh, I love Namco, or he'd be so sad he'd go, he'd be unhealthy again from the pain of the founder of Namco, the father of Pac-Man, Masaya Nakamura. And I say that because there were many articles that, in the headline and in the article, in quotes, the father of Pac-Man, Masaya Nakamura, because he led the company that birthed Pac-Man, and he was the one that decided, hey, I want to have arcade games, and these are the arcade games I want to try to do. This is sort of, he set up the environment. And according to reports, that name was given to him by Namco, because they recognized, hey, this is sort of the father of Pac-Man. He's the father, basically the father of the company. Is when you're saying the father of Pac-Man, you're also saying he's the father of Namco, which he was. Because now Namco and Pac-Man are synonymous with each other. You cannot think of one without the other. It's the mascot. It's one of the most popular video game mascots of all time. It's the most important video game of all time, Pac-Man. So some people decided, though, they were going to get offended by this term for some strange reason. It was really strange for me. It'll be the first and last time you'll probably ever see the white knighting of Toru Iwatani, the actual developer and programmer of Pac-Man. People saying, tweeting and getting angry about, oh, how dare you not say that Nakamura is the father of Pac-Man. It was Iwatani. Even though every fucking article I saw where he was, in quotes, the father of Pac-Man, also made a note to say that Iwatani was the actual creator of Pac-Man. So it's not like Iwatani's getting cheated out of his day in the sun. Don't worry. When he passes away in 20 years, you can go honor him. But let's be honest for a second here. You were not upset about this? Really? You probably didn't know, and this is the general you. How many of you out there that were pissed that some articles quoted, in quotes, called Nakamura the father of Pac-Man, knew Toru Iwatani's name? Or really gave a shit about Pac-Man at all before that opportunity to do your tweets and to go after, some of these websites? It was both mind-boggling and one of the dumbest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. One of the biggest wastes of time you can probably do is to, instead of honoring a great man's life who started this gigantic company and one of the pioneers of the video game industry itself, instead of honoring him, you're going to be fucking worried about a nickname that was given to him, reportedly from Namco themselves. That's how you choose to use your energy when the rest of the world wants to simply honor what sounds like a really cool individual. After the Namco Bandai merger, he still was there at an honorary position. Lived a great life. Was it 91 years old? Father of Pac-Man? Sure, why not? Iwatani probably doesn't give a shit. That's his nickname. Why should you? That's all I'm saying. Just one of the silliest things I've seen in a while. That's all. Oh yeah, this is one thing I didn't know. I'm glad this stuff came up. So Namco is an acronym. I didn't know that. This is great. It's not great that he died, but it's great that I found this out after he died. Nakamura Amusement Machine Manufacturing Company. So N-A-M and then C-O for company. Namco. Holy shit. The guy's name. Nakamura Namco. He is the father of Pac-Man. He's got to be.